All right. Awesome. Okay, well, for the last few weeks, we've been learning some really cool stories from the life of Jacob, the miscreant. He has not done too terribly many things so far to endear himself to us, but that's okay. We can still root for him. Start with what I think you guys will all find rather an obvious place to start. Quick review of how Egypt worked. Egypt, ancient Egypt, obviously, they had a lot of gods, very polytheistic. Their gods were based around the things that they depended on. Egypt had a god of the Nile. This god oversaw the Nile, decided when the Nile would flood and overflow its banks, when it would ebb and the water levels would be low. That's this god's whole job. There is many gods like this. Hecate, a goddess with a frog head, was the goddess who oversaw and controlled the behavior and populations of beasts. This was her role in their religious beliefs. Ra, one of the two most preeminent of their gods, was the god of the sun. He ruled over the day. And Anubis was the god of death. He ruled in the night. In Exodus, a little ways further ahead than where we are now, God rescues the descendants of the focus of our story today, Jacob, from Egypt. In the process of rescuing his people from Egypt, he unmanned the gods of Egypt. The very first plague he sends turns the Nile to blood, and the priests of Egypt can't do anything about it. This god loses its place of authority for the Egyptians because the power of this so-called deity is shown to be nothing in comparison to the power that God has to bring. Frogs everywhere. Hecate and her funny face are of no use to the Egyptians at all. She can't control the beasts. What kind of goddess is this? Ra, the god of the sun, blacked out, completely blacked out by just a whim of the God of Israel. One of their greatest gods, Anubis, the god of death himself, powerless to intervene on behalf of Pharaoh, who is himself supposedly a god. Completely powerless, completely unmanning all of these gods. So what in the world does that have to do with Jacob? He's never even heard of an Egyptian before, and he certainly doesn't have a whole lot of descendants, and none of them are captive anywhere in Egypt. But last week ended with something of an exodus, didn't it? Jacob loads his family and his possessions up, and they hightail it out of town while Laban is busy shearing his sheep. This is an exodus of sorts. And there's a lot of parallel between this story and the story that Jacob's descendants will later experience. In the process of running out of town, Jacob's favorite wife stole Laban's house gods, and they leave. We pick up just as Laban finds out about all of this, here in verse 22. When it was told Laban on the third day, 3 days now, after Jacob has noped out of town, when it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days, and followed close after into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." I think it's interesting that it's pointed out several places actually in this chapter. Laban is not called Laban, he's called Laban the Aramean. Jacob is of the chosen people. He is a direct descendant of Abraham. Laban is not. And I think, and a lot of commentators I've found think that the difference is being called out here. Laban isn't just Jacob's uncle. He is a foreigner. He is not one of the chosen people. God is coming to someone who is not of Israel and saying, you will not disturb this person who I have a covenant with. And most commentators also agree that that not saying anything to Jacob, either good or bad, is in essence a threat. Don't you touch him. That's mine. You don't get to touch that. So Jacob, pursued, chased down by Laban, paralleling the exodus from Egypt. The Israelites run out of Egypt, embarrassing the gods of Egypt on their way out, and leaving with a whole bunch of the possessions of their former oppressors. Jacob is wealthy with wives, children, and flocks that were all once possessions of Laban and are now all possessions of Jacob. And he is running for his life to get away from Laban. You can't move that fast with flocks or little children. And Laban catches up to him. Just like in Exodus, when the Jews are caught at the Red Sea, Jacob is caught. He's not butted up against a barrier, but he can't outrun his pursuer any further. Laban has caught him, and Laban outnumbers him. Jacob is the only man there. He doesn't have any strong men who are trained or skilled in combat. Laban has brought all of his laborers with him. Jacob is in a very, very bad spot. But, as is said in Exodus 3:6, I have surely seen the affliction of my people here in Egypt, and have heard their cry, and I know their suffering. Jacob has an advantage that Laban cannot fathom, and that is that Jacob has a God who sees and hears, and a God who speaks and acts. Laban has gods who get stolen. Jacob has a real advantage in this way. He doesn't even fully understand the trouble that he's facing. He thinks that Laban is just miffed at him for having left so quickly with all of the sheep that Jacob fairly earned. He doesn't even realize yet that his wife has stolen Laban's gods. But still he is protected. Before Laban even catches up with him, he is told by God in a dream, don't touch my people. And that's the God that Jacob has on his side. He sees and hears what Jacob goes through over 20 years. And when Laban sets out to pursue him, he speaks and acts to protect Jacob. In 25 through 30, Laban does what Laban has been doing for 20 years. Manipulating and berating and being his usual tricks himself. Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. Laban's mad. He's berating Jacob for things that, why would he care, right? He sold his daughters for labor from Jacob. And he sold his flocks for labor from Jacob. And he has no right to the sons and daughters of Jacob. Those were born to his lawful wives. Laban has no claim here, and he's shown no care for these family members of his. He's shown no affection for Jacob, and yet he's saying, why did you rob me of the chance to part with you with a celebration? I'll break out the instruments, we'll slaughter the fatted calf, and we'll have a party before you go. But this doesn't track with the character that we've seen from Laban so far. I think we're about to see from Laban the real reason he's mad. But first, Laban has to bluster a little bit more. He says, "It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.'" So he basically just says, it is in my power to do you harm, but I can't. It's not in his power to do harm to Jacob. It's not. A God who sees and hears and acts, that God has intervened already and told him that that's not in his power. He's just blustering. He's just being Laban again, right? I love that in verse 42 of this section, Jacob has the counter to this claim of, it is in my power to do you harm, but I'm not going to. He says, "If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night." I think that verse encapsulates what is most valuable in this story really beautifully. That God saw Jacob's affliction and intervened on his behalf. Laban now exposes why he's actually miffed. As soon as I find my place. Verse 30. "And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" That's what he's mad about. That is the thing that is actually motivating him to chase Jacob across the countryside, leaving aside any chores he might have at home and just pursue vengeance and the retrieval of his gods. The gods that this is talking about, these household gods, these probably aren't temple gods, the kind that you bow down to, you worship. These are more like character gods, right? These are emblems, like carven images of some sort that he keeps in a sacred place in his home and reveres. A modern iteration of that might be a man who watched way too much YouTube, found a guy named Andrew Tate, and then decided that a god for him, his household god, would be keeping his own precious value at the center of his mind. I like to play video games. I love Halo. In Halo, you have a HUD, your heads-up display. It shows you how much shields you've got, and health, and ammunition, and a little aiming reticle. Those are the really important things, right? If you make sure you've got enough ammunition and you're pointing it in the right direction, you'll win the game. That's the kind of household god that this is, right? This is this revered thing that if it's kept in the forefront, it will see you to success and provide you with security. That's the kind of forefront god that people like Andrew Tate offer to people with bad taste. That's what's been stolen from Laban. That's why he's so mad. The thing that if he keeps sacred, gives him security, has been taken away. How he failed to notice the fact that his gods can be stolen, it's a lousy god, but I guess that's up to him. Jacob answers this accusation, and he says to Laban, "Because I was afraid," right? This is why I packed up my family and things and ran away. "I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters away from me by force." As for this other accusation, Jacob answers, "Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. Jacob has no idea that any of Laban's actual possessions are in his caravan. And he thinks this is kind of an aside, right? He's like, "Listen, I ran away because I think you suck. But, side note about your gods, sure, if they're here, whoever stole them, we'll get rid of them. I don't care. You can have your gods back if we have them. I don't think we do, but whatever." This is the real Laban now, right? He's He's focused on his gods. And the real Jacob, who is just sort of incensed and trying to run away with his things. And he's given Laban permission to root around and find his gods. And now we see just how silly these gods are. So Laban starts searching. Keep in mind, these are gods that could not prevent themselves from being stolen by a cranky daughter. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the 2 female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Right? If this is your first time through the story, like, this is a good tent spot, right? Like, oh, Rachel's had it now. Rachel had taken the gods and put them in the camel saddle and sat on them. Laban felt about, became angry. I don't think too many of you guys have keys to lose. Some of you do. I have, before in my life, lost my keys and searched for them to the point of exasperation that I checked the freezer. I know that's not where the keys are, but like maybe I was getting a popsicle and they were in my hand, and I've looked everywhere plausible. I'm looking in all the implausible places, and I'm rechecking places I definitely already checked, and I'm like running my hands over the counters and between the couch cushions, just desperately crazy, just searching for the keys that are, spoiler, in my pocket. Unlike Laban's gods. He comes out of the tent. He has rummaged about in the tent. The text here says that he felt all around the tent. So he's like patting down the baggage and patting through the bedding. And where are my gods? Where are my gods? They're under Rachel. Terrific gods this guy has. They can be stolen by his daughter when she's angry at him. And now, as he searches desperately for his gods that could not stop themselves from being stolen, they also cannot, manage a... They can't get that much out. They're just impotent and silent and under a butt. These are lousy, lousy gods. Our God is high above all. Laban's gods are under a butt. They are terrible gods. He comes towards Rachel. Rachel sees him coming. She knows she can't get up, so she adds an extra bit of insult that I think the post-Egypt Israelites reading this story from Moses would find especially funny. She says, "I can't stand up. The time of women is upon me." For a Hebrew, that is a time of uncleanness. Anything that woman touches is unclean. So these gods are stolen, impotent, silent, cannot even cry out to their follower for help, and now they are made unclean by just a girl. Really pathetic, silly gods to base your life around. Meanwhile, Jacob's God is the God who sees his affliction and comes to Laban in a dream and says, "Don't you dare touch him." Laban's gods are useless. Jacob's God is right here in the story, intervening on his behalf and protecting him. There's a parallel in this to ourselves and the story of salvation. When Christ came just at the start of his ministry on earth, he went into the desert and he spent 40 days in the desert fasting. In some sense mirroring the Israelites spending 40 years in the desert, but there may be a stretch there. I don't know that that's a real connection. The connection I do like is when Satan comes to him and he tempts him. Satan is our accuser. Satan is the one who pursues us. After we escape from the tyranny of sin and death, Satan pursues us. He runs us down, comes storming into our camp, and accuses us. That accuser comes before Christ, tempts him, and Christ shuts him down with, "It is written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." And Satan is powerless to do anything else. He is finished right then and there in the face of actual godhood. Christ on the cross finishes that accusation off and leaves us completely free. Just like Jacob in this story, with his help, with his service, we break free of that oppression and get to race on out of camp and make our way towards the promised land. And when the accuser comes calling, he is sent packing because he is completely impotent over us as those who are saved. That is what Jacob is experiencing here. One of the earliest moments in human history of a human being experiencing a gospel telling. It's not the full gospel yet. Christ hasn't come yet, but the experience is there. Jacob goes on a tirade against Laban following all of this. This guy's just rummaged through his whole camp and come up with nothing. And Jacob still doesn't know that Rachel stole the gods. So now he's just got this crazy dude who ran into his camp, ransacked it, shouting, "Where'd you put my gods?" And Jacob is sitting here like, "What would I want with your marble? What do you mean? I don't have them." He goes on a tirade against Laban. Jacob became angry and berated Laban. This is starting in 36. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household? Set it here before me and my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between the two of us. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. What was torn by wild beasts, I did not bring to you. I bore that loss myself. For from my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. And my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If that is not a lovely poetic description of what it is to be a fallen human without salvation, I don't know what is. Sin is a cruel, cruel master. It will change your wages 10 times. It will require payments of you that are not just for you to pay. It will ruin you and manipulate you and trap you. But you have a God who sees your affliction and hears your cry, and he speaks and acts on your behalf. Unlike any other God that can be made up, this one is real. So present. And here Jacob calls to that, again in verse 42. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. Jacob knows why he's getting away from Laban with wives and sons and daughters and flocks, and apparently gods. He knows why he is escaping. It is because God saw his affliction and heard his cries and spoke and acted to save Jacob. Laban is now defeated. He answers and says to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, and the children and the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine." He's blustering again like before. He knows he can't put any weight behind this, but he wants to put on a good show. "But what can I do this day for these my daughters or their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I. Let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. And Laban called it Jegar Shahudetha. I feel like Connor had a really good stab at it earlier. But Jacob called it Galeed. Laban's name for it, which is unpronounceable, is Aramaic. Jacob's name for it is Hebrew. There's an interesting split there. There's a divergence between these two, even in the way they're naming things all of a sudden. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he named it Galeed and Mizpah, for he said, "The Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight." And once again, he's got to bluster just a little bit and be impressive for just one more moment while he's being completely humiliated. "If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me." Then Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me, to do harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." He still doesn't really know who this God is that Jacob has. He knows it's somehow connected to the family line. Laban's a part of that family line too, but he doesn't really understand that this is Abraham's God. It's separate from the rest of the family. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, that is the awe of his father Isaac, the submission to and following of God that he has learned from his father Isaac. He swears by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country, and early in the morning Laban arose, kissed his grandchildren and children, blessed them, and Laban departed to return home. Jacob has been saved out of oppression by the God who sees his affliction, hears his cries, acts and speaks to bring him out of that. And now, as we prepare for the next leg of the story, the lineage of Abraham is now completely cut off. Right? As a young man, Jacob is sent out to go find a wife of their people with Laban. Now, the family that Abraham and Isaac had left behind is absolutely cut off by treaty. They do not have anything to do with each other anymore. Now, Abraham's lineage is a unique and separate people. And Jacob, full of the new faith that he has just gained from having been saved out of oppression and attack by his living, active, present, real God, is now ready to march back into the promised land towards Esau, who he has reason to think might want to kill him. He may be marching into battle. He doesn't know, but he knows that a real God, the only real God, is with him, watches over him, hears his cries for help, and will intervene with word and deed should Jacob need it. So he can go confidently forward into the next leg of his story. I think that is a good place to conclude. For each of you guys, consider idols that might be in your life, and remember that they are silly and stupid. All of our idols can just end up under a butt, and they can't do anything about it. But God sees you, and he hears your cries, and he will speak and act to help you in your afflictions. Maybe not in the way you want, but in the way that the God who will do those things for you deems best in his perfect wisdom. I'll close this in a quick prayer.